Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We had ourselves a good weekend in the Boston Celtics fan household. That is our household.
That's Jenna Wolfe's household.
No, Stephanie's a big Patriots fan.
Correct.
I'm a big Celtics fan. But
Absolutely.
You know what? I did not gloat. I walked in this morning. I sat in the meeting the entire time.
You sent somewhat obnoxious text messages. You didn't gloat in person.
I didn't gloat in person.
You did it via the internet.
I did via the internet. That's what I did. Yeah.
How was your weekend, C?
It was great.
It was great?
It was great, yeah.
I had a long trip to Boston. Was not a very happy trip to Boston. Came back. Now we're ready to do this television
Danielle
show.
is a wonderful wife of yours for letting
Olivia
you go
said,
on the news.
hold that L.
Hold that L.
Yeah. Olivia is another Celtic fan on the staff.
We've got two of them.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, here we go. Let's start the program. Only one thing could have interrupted Mother's Day festivities yesterday, and that one thing was a game between the Cavs and Celtics. And not just any game. Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, the game where most thought LeBron James would dominate after 6 days of rest, which made what actually happened kind of surprising. Celtics blew the doors off of them, winning their 8th straight home playoff game. They've been so good in Boston, those Celtics. LeBron James had arguably his worst game of the postseason, not arguably, statistically, scoring only 15 points and turning the ball over 7 times. But he's not worried.
I have zero level of concern at this stage. I didn't go to college, so it's not March Madness. You know, you get better throughout the series. You see ways you can get better throughout the series, but I've been down 0-1, I've been down 0-2. I've been down before in the postseason. But for me, there's never no level of concern, no matter how bad I play tonight with 7 turnovers. How inefficient I was shooting the ball. Just as confident going into a series, no matter if it's a 0-0 series or I'm down 0-1. So we have another opportunity to be better as a ball club coming in Tuesday night, and we'll see what happens.
LeBron James placed a number on his, it was a numerical level of concern. What was the number?
0.
0. 0. CC, should LeBron be more concerned than 0?
Well, I'm sure that he has zero concern. There's no athlete that in competition they have zero concern, even though to the media, I can understand what he's saying. There's no need to panic. But when you get crushed in game number 1 after having 6 days off and it looked like you didn't prepare, of course, anyone, just normal common sense, would be like you would be prepared. They looked like their team did the first round against the Pacers. That would generate concern. Now, their inability to make shots, I wouldn't be concerned about that. LeBron being more efficient in game number 2 and moving forward. No, those things I wouldn't be concerned about. But it looking like they hadn't prepared for it, looking like Brad Stevens had their playbook in their back pocket, looking like they couldn't make any adjustments. Yeah, it looked like the Cavs, this moment and their new players, this moment was too big for them. So LeBron's not concerned, but I would be concerned.
The new player, listen, I don't expect much out of Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson. The new players weren't my concern yesterday. It was LeBron having his single worst playoff game that he's had since Game 3 against Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, a game the Cavs lost as well, the only game in the Eastern Conference playoffs they lost last year. The Cavs, guys that shouldn't have the moment be too big for him. Guys who have played in NBA Finals, such as Kevin Love, such as J.R. Smith, Kyle Korver even, not looking like themselves, and the Cavs' inability to counterpunch when they knew the Celtics were going to come out with a wrinkle. This has been the best defensive team in the NBA all year long for a reason. And the Celtics did something very interesting, which is they switched everything, which you knew they might do.
Yes.
But then when the Cavs tried to hunt down a mismatch, as soon as you tried to enter the ball to the player with the mismatch, they switched again. And the Cavs were not ready after the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter to combat that wrinkle that they hadn't seen from Brad Stevens. The reason I'm closer to LeBron's stated level of concern than CeCe's is they simply are not going to go another game all year where they miss their first 14 three-pointers. They're not going to go another game all year where they are 1 for 12 on open threes. And they will not have any other game all year, anything close to that performance by LeBron James. He called Game 1 against the Raptors the worst game he's played maybe all season. he still gave you 24, 11, and 13. It was just inefficient. LeBron was sloppy with the ball, wildly inefficient from the field, couldn't hit a shot, and seemed disengaged throughout different periods of the game. And so that won't happen again. That's why this doesn't change my pick for the series. The game didn't go the way you would have hoped it to go, but I don't think it changes the trajectory of the series.
Why do you think that happened? 6 days off for this team to shore up some nagging injuries, get ready, prepare themselves, watch as much film as they wanted to watch? Or was it that Brad Stevens had this team so prepared for what they knew LeBron was going to try to do at least?
You can give Brad Stevens some credit, but the coach don't make shots for you. The coach don't help you put the ball in the bucket. They did have a great game plan, the way they got the ball in the paint and dominated the paint. Yes, the rest, that's logical. For all the playoff series that we've seen, the team that had the great deal of rest, the conventional is, man, we got rest, we're going to play better. Basketball doesn't tell you that, not in the NBA. The team that consistently plays every 2 or 3 nights, they're able to maintain the level of play because that off time, you can't recreate the intensity in practice. And NBA
like
practices it. So that's what we've seen typically in the playoffs. The team that went maybe a long series, that they come into the next series with some bounce because of the consistency.
Well, and about LeBron, though, there has been a trend these playoffs that LeBron has used Game 1 as a feeling out game, so to speak. Now, that doesn't explain the 5 for 16 shooting or the 0 for 5 from 3, but it might explain these only 16 shots. It might explain the lack of aggressiveness. They are 1 and 2 in Game 1s this year. We can show the numbers. The only Game 1 they've won was when the supporting cast was very good against Toronto. In Game 1s, he's averaging 21 points, shooting 38% and an amazingly bad 6% from 3. In every other game in the series, he's averaging 36 points on 58%. We played a clip last week of David Griffin talking about LeBron James on Bill Simmons' podcast. Part of the clip we didn't play is he compared LeBron to a computer on learning mode, a guy who sees things, ingests or digests what he's seeing, and then makes adjustments on the fly. LeBron alluded to that in the post-game press conference. He said, okay, now I know how they're going to play me. That doesn't, again, explain away or justify 15 points on less than 33% shooting. But I think it does explain some of the approach he had in the game that mirrors the approach of Game 1 against the Pacers, Game 2 against the Raptors.
It was actually incredible. He's able to go back. I think someone asked him in the press conference about the Celtics' first run, and he was like, this play we did this and that. He remembers every single thing.
When they got it down to 14.
It was the start of the fourth quarter he was asked about. Yep.
So here's my question. We know that LeBron is going to come back and be more of LeBron, but let's talk about the role players because they didn't show up in the Pacers series. They did show up in the Raptors series, and now you start Game 1 and we sort of didn't have them here. What's your level of concern with the weapons around LeBron James?
That's where all my concern is. I know LeBron's going to show up, but the role players still concern me. This is not, and I'll be consistent in this is not a great Cavaliers team. So if the role players don't play well, they got no chance. Against the 4 teams that are left, Celtics, them, to me, the Cavs are the worst team. Now, they have the best player. But of the 4 teams left, the Cavs are the worst team of the bunch.
You think the Cavs, top to bottom, are a worse team than the Celtics?
Yes.
Okay, that's
from a team standpoint, how to play as a team, how to function as a team, how to play defensively as a team. Yes, as a team, of the 4 teams left, the Cavs are the worst team.
So the reason that I disagree with that is the Celtics have been 2 different teams in this postseason. 1 team at home and 1 team on the road. And so obviously, because they have home court, you're going to have to take one of those home games from them. But Jenna, I think you mentioned it in the morning meeting. They're now 8-0 in home playoff games are Boston. And I'm sure that's what Brad Stevens is preaching to them. Take care of Game 2, right? You won't have to go win a game in Cleveland if you can take care of that. And I can speak, listen, I was there yesterday. That's a great crowd. That's a smart crowd. The crowd absolutely helps them. I think sometimes the role players, even though they didn't in round 1, feed off LeBron. And LeBron almost gave everyone license yesterday to, our threes aren't hitting, not locking in on defense. I don't think that'll be the case in Game 2.
The one thing about this Celtics team that I think is different, because they had so many injuries and such inconsistency as far as the lineup, They were not a good offensive team. And what we've seen in the playoffs and what we saw yesterday, this is a better offensive team. It's a better shooting team. The longer they play together, we always talk about the Cavs. Oh, they haven't been together. Oh, they'll get it together. Well, the Celtics haven't been together either. And when they made a lineup change as far as Marcus Morris, put him into a lineup, more explosive, better shooters. All the guys can dribble. All the guys can shoot three-pointers. That, to me, there's a reason why I have a level of concern more so than other people watching the Cavs. This Celtics team is a better team offensively.
All right, so the Celtics takes a 1-0 lead over the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. Out west, how can the Rockets make a statement against the Warriors? We'll break that down next on First Things First.
This time of year brings us two things, graduations and Father's Day, and the gifts that go along with them. Before you buy Dad another tie or that grad a balloon that's just going to float away, ask yourself this: does my dad or my grad like wings or sports, or better yet, both? If the answer is yes, then get them a Buffalo Wild Wings gift card. Right now, if you purchase $30 worth or more in store or online, they give you a $5 bonus to keep for yourself. That's a gift that gives back. How generous of you. Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, among the things we've been waiting for, Nick to tell me he's going vegan, CC to offer to babysit my kids, and Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals between the Rockets and the Warriors.
I'd say those two things have the same likelihood of happening, Jenna.
Never! These two teams have been on a collision course for months now. The Warriors, with 4 probable future Hall of Famers, and the Rockets, a team that's 50-5 when its 3 best players take the floor. Warriors are looking to get to the finals for the 4th straight time. Nick, what is the key to the game tonight?
Hunt down Stephen Curry. He said he wants them to do it. I want them to take him up on that. And by that I mean get Steph involved in pick and rolls where he has to guard the ball handler. And I want to make this clear. I am not saying that because I think Steph's a terrible defender. I don't even think Steph's a below-average defender. But I think Steph has shown a propensity in his career, particularly in these types of games, to not have the ability to stay out of foul trouble, to not have the ability to keep his hands out, to not try to draw the 50-50 block charge call. And if you can get Steph Curry with 2 early fouls, you are at a distinct advantage. Even if he doesn't get early fouls, if you can tire him out, if you can wear him out to a degree, if you can make him less explosive on the offensive end, you are at a decisive advantage. So that is the Rockets. They didn't say, but it was reported that's what they were going to try to do. Steph got wind of that, said this weekend, I hope they do it every play. The Rockets didn't take him up on that. That, to me, is something that can give the Rockets an edge in a game that is critically important to them.
Yeah, it's not a Rockets philosophy. That's the NBA philosophy. That's what you have to do to great players, especially guys who are undersized or small. You have to be able to make them work on the offensive end. That's one of the reasons why the Celtics put Marcus Morris in also. So LeBron would have to work on the defensive end. Now, it's a different type of work than running around picks. But if you are a guard in the NBA, especially in the Western Conference, you know this is what they're going to try to do. So it's not just Steph Curry. Like, if you are that type of guard, especially the way they play with the pace, you're going to have to run through a lot of picks. You're going to have to play a lot of defense. What I think is important are the role players of Houston and Clint Capella. Can he make the Warriors adjust? Can he dominate the paint? Can he be there on the lobs, on the pick and roll that would make Steve Kerr and the Warriors say, you know something? Us playing small is not the best concept for us. Or when we do play small, we can only play for a short period of time. So role players, but more importantly, Clint Capella, watch his role, what he does. If he scores 15 to 20 points, I believe that right there makes makes Houston almost unbeatable if the other guys, Chris Paul and, of course, Harden, have this type of games that we're expecting.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's the second point I was going to make with Clint Capella, and I want to build on it. I don't think they're going to start the Hamptons 5 tonight. I don't think Andre Iguodala is going to get the start. I think because of Capella being such an important X factor, I think Kevon Looney will start at center for the Golden State Warriors tonight. I think they trust him. Zaza is basically unplayable against the Rockets.
He's a cheerleader on the bench.
Right.
And watch him when they shoot threes, the one with the big head, he'll be cheering, dapping people up on the side.
And I don't know if they trust JaVale's basketball intelligence to be able to deal with as many high screen and rolls as they're going to run. I would imagine the Warriors will start Kevon Looney Looney because I think they agree with your point, Chris, that Clint Capella getting off, Clint Capella getting Draymond in foul trouble, Clint Capella getting those little lobs from James Harden that he loves to throw. That's something that starting five they used in the final 2 games against the Pelicans doesn't have a great answer for.
So do both Chris Paul and James Harden have to have monster games for them to stay in this game? That's the only thing you guys haven't mentioned yet. We talked about the role players and we talked about going up against the Warriors.
That's a given. When you play against the Warriors, they have such firepower, and they have a four-headed monster. We just a given that Chris Paul and Harden have to play well.
Okay.
As Nick would say, I don't see a world that exists that Chris Paul not playing well and Harden not playing well the way the team is set up. But the Rockets have such good role players because, man, Eric Gordon, he can get you 20. So if Chris Paul maybe doesn't necessarily have the offensive output as far as points, but has assists and plays great defense, they have Trevor Ariza. He can get you 18 or 20. So they do have other players compared to some other teams who don't have other scorers who can get off. So in case one of those scorers don't, it's not the end of the road, but for them, the recipe for success is their big three, which they've been very, very successful when all 3 of them are in the lineup and all 3 of them playing well.
And there are certain segments of the game, Jenna, if I'm going to pivot from those 2 guys for a moment, the Rockets have to win. They have to win the first 4 minutes of the second quarter and the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. Those are the times when Steve Kerr traditionally has sat Steph and KD. Let the offense revolve around Klay Thompson. The Rockets have been built as such. They have one of the best. We talked a lot this year about the bench unit Toronto has. They have a bench unit led by Eric Gordon that can involve Gerald Green. They might dust off Joe Johnson. That where all of it, Luke Richard Mbah a Moute be out there to probably guard Klay Thompson. They have to win when the starters are not in. When the stars are not in, that's where the Rockets have an edge because the Warriors don't have a very deep bench. Their backup point guards are Sean Livingston and Quinn Cook. They don't really have a traditional backup shooting guard. Andre Iguodala, he might be in the starting lineup. I don't think he will be. The Warriors carry a bunch of centers for reasons I don't understand. Zaza, Damian Jones, Jordan Bell, JaVale McGee, Kevon Looney. They carry 5 centers. Because of that, they don't have a very deep bench. If their backup shooting guard is Swaggy P, like you've got to be able to take advantage of the Warriors in the time when Steph and KD are resting. Those are key moments. But your question about Harden, it's not a given to me that Harden will play great. It is a given, and I think this is what you were saying, C, that if Harden doesn't play great, they can't win. Right?
It becomes very difficult. It becomes very, very difficult because he's so ball dominant. And I just believe to be able to not to finish this season, being the MVP. You don't want to finish not playing well against the Warriors. Given what Harden, or 2 of the last 3 years, he could have been the MVP. What he does in this series, I believe, could be the crowning moment of his career.
And trying to get it done in Houston, at home, how important those 2 games are.
And they've played 10 playoff games this year. Harden's played an MVP level in 4 of them. Like, that's the reality. Harden hasn't been great throughout this postseason. Now, when he's been great...
But he's got a better supporting cast.
No, I'm saying they played 10 playoff games this year.
Yes.
This year, they played 10 playoff games. He's played an MVP level in 4 of them.
Yeah, what I'm saying is he has a better supporting cast.
Oh, okay.
They were still able to be competitive even though he didn't play great.
Absolutely.
Game 1 tonight.
Yeah, cannot wait.
Rockets and Warriors. Coming up, let's talk some golf. Is Tiger back? Please let Tiger be back. Makes our show better. That's next on First Things First. All right, how about some stories to start your morning? The Colts say they have no doubt Andrew Luck will be ready by training camp.
Oh.
We've heard rumblings of return dates for a while now, though. Luck missed the entire 2017 season recovering from shoulder surgery. Chris Carter, you buying that Luck will be ready by training camp?
Absolutely. I'm with the Colts on that. I'm glad they made the announcement. That means everything's progressing. He's throwing a little football right now. You got plenty of time this offseason. He should be ready for the first day of training camp. Listen, he missed all of last season. Now, he did get misdiagnosed, but I like the fact that they announced he's training camp, he'll be ready.
I hope this is true. Football is better with a healthy Andrew Luck, but we haven't had that in 3 years. However, I will say this quickly, though. Vegas doesn't agree with him. You can make some money on this if they're correct. Vegas says they'll be lucky to win 7 games this year. With a healthy Andrew Luck, that team's at least a 500 team.
All right, to the NBA now. Brett Brown says the Sixers need to add a high-level free agent to compete for a title. Philly has been linked to LeBron James and Paul George in free agency and linked to potential trades for Kawhi Leonard. Some big names out there. Nick, which high-level player do you think is most likely to join this team?
I believe it to be LeBron. I think them flaming out in the second round the way they did makes it to where the narrative, people wouldn't crush LeBron for going there. I don't believe there's any scenario, including now winning a championship, that LeBron stays in Cleveland. So for all those reasons, I think LeBron's the most likely.
Yeah, he's going to have plenty of incentive after the Celtics put him out. The Celtics put the Cavs out, put the 76ers out. He's got to. He's got to be able to go to the 70s.
Is that an official pick? Celtics?
I got a TV show to do, man. It's called content.
Okay.
All right, LeBron's going to the 76ers. Most likely to happen, Jenna.
Okay. I like it, Cece. Moving on to the Toronto Raptors. Toronto fired head coach Dwayne Casey on Friday, just 2 days after being voted Coach of the Year by his fellow coaches. Casey led the Raptors to 59 wins this season before being swept by the Cavaliers. Nick, how surprised were you the Raptors did this, fired Dwayne Casey?
I was, to sound like a parent. I'm not surprised. I'm just disappointed. I don't think they're going to do better.
I told you they were going to fire him. You were like, no.
No, I said they shouldn't. I never said they wouldn't. I said they shouldn't. CeCe, though, made, I thought, a very interesting point. You said being a good coach doesn't mean you can't get fired. Like, I think Dwayne Casey's a good coach. I think he did a good job. And they had to fire somebody if they're not going to trade DeRozan or Lowry, so he ends up being the fall guy.
The coach had to go. And the game number 3, not trapping LeBron in the backcourt, taking the ball out of his hand, that's a fireable offense. Losing to LeBron 3 straight years and being lopsided, that's fireable. They got a good enough team. They need another voice. I'm glad they got rid of him.
Wow. All right, finally, the Celtics blew out the Cavs yesterday. It was the 8th straight playoff game Boston has won at home. Nick, you were at the game. How impressed were you with the home crowd? And did they help?
They absolutely helped. Being there, you can get a sense as to why this team really thrives off the energy in the building. It's not just a loud crowd, it's a smart crowd. And by that I mean they could sense, particularly at the beginning of the fourth quarter, the Cavs had gone on a mini run to end the third quarter, cut it to 14. The crowd sensed that, upped their energy, the team followed suit. They also understood the importance of those plays when LeBron says 2 points isn't always 2 points. When Marcus Morris misses a shot, gets his own rebound, follows up with a dunk, that's more than 2 points. That's deflating. The offensive rebound after good defensive possession that turns into points. They were loud throughout. They were angry in a good way. Like, no, that was a lights-out home crowd. That was as good of a home crowd as I've been to in a playoff game in quite some time.
Boston's played great basketball as a franchise for too long for them not to have a great home crowd. I remember going there, watching Magic Johnson throw the legendary hook on them. So I've been to Boston, the old Boston to where they are now. Very educated sports fans into the game. Crowd really helps at the beginning of the game. Some other points of the game, the home crowd is overrated. But at the beginning of the game, that's where the crowd has the most effect. The fourth quarter, I don't believe the crowd had an effect on the game. Celtics had an open shot in the corner. They hit it. Jason Tatum went 94 feet coast to coast with a Euro step, as LeBron said. That got nothing to do with the crowd. Marcus Morris misses a shot, gets the rebound, and goes for a dunk. All right, so the crowd is good at the beginning of the game, but after that, it's up to the players. And as a player, that's what we always talked about. As the visitor, realize the crowd's going to give them a boost at the beginning, and that is about it unless you play well.
Here's the point that I'm making, though, because I agree with you. That at the beginning, listen, they won the game in the first quarter, by the way, and the crowd was extraordinary. But there are certain basketball teams that you go there, and the crowd, I think, doesn't totally understand the gravity of individual situations, and sometimes only gets really loud when the team is playing really well. And what I saw,
or it doesn't show up at all, like in Houston.
Right, in Houston, where they're a very late arriving crowd. Right. What I saw in the game yesterday was in the second quarter, for example, when the Celtics went through a drought. That's when the crowd got loud again, when the team wasn't playing well. I don't know if it translates to the players on the court. I know sitting there, it seemed like if I were playing, they were cheering at the exact times I would want them to be, when it would seem like the team was dragging. I was thoroughly impressed by that.
A lot of times, as a player, and we had a player sit here and tell us this, you're blacked out during the game. The sound is muffled with the crowd, so the crowd doesn't help you. It doesn't help the ball go in, don't help you make smarter decisions.
Right.
All right? But at the beginning of games and also at the end of games when things are pressurized, they do help. You much rather be playing at home in those situations, beginning and end.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask how received you were. How well received or poorly
Oh, it wasn't
received
great.
you
It
were.
wasn't great. And it didn't help that
Yep,
as part of the
let's hear it.
pregame hype video, they showed a clip. They were showing a bunch of media clips,
Yeah.
people doubting the Celtics. I glanced up at the Jumbotron. Oh, there's me.
Nick
talking
Wright.
about how the Celtics are going to lose to the Sixers. And I had my hood up because I was kind of trying to be incognito. This little kid in front of me. I'd given him, they had shirts for everybody, right? So I gave the little kid my shirt beforehand so he remembered my face. He turns to me, he's like, that's you. I'm like, zip it. Ixnay. He's like, that's you. And then all of a sudden people knew it was me. That made it a little uncomfortable, but
All right.
no drinks. It wasn't as bad as the Philly fans. They didn't start a chant about
Nobody
me.
threw anything at you?
Why is it Philly and Boston, two of the toughest sports towns in America?
That's why, because they're tough.
They don't like me. That ain't great.
Well, listen to yourself.
Listen
if
to
you
what?
were in those cities, you wouldn't like yourself either.
All right, let's talk a little golf. If I told you Tiger Woods finished tied for 11th at the Players' Championship this weekend, you'd be impressed that he was in contention, but a little disappointed that he didn't finish better until you dug a little deeper. After a subpar 2 days where he barely made the cut, Tiger bounced back strong, finishing 11 strokes under par. He shot a 65 on Saturday and a final round 69. Here's Tiger on what he considered a great outing.
God, I played really good today. I hit it so good. It was nice. I had control of it from tee to green. I made some putts. I felt good on basically every facet of the game. I felt very comfortable with every facet of my game today. Everything felt good. I had control. I was hitting it high, low, right, left. Didn't matter what it was. I felt like I had control of it today.
You know, I watched that, and I watched it earlier this morning when I got in again, because I don't ever remember Tiger ever talking like that before. I don't ever remember him not winning and saying, I played so well today. It's refreshing. It's nice to see that at least it appears he's out there having fun. We should mention Jordan Spieth also said, playing with him and watching him play, he thinks he's going to win at some point very soon. Cece, how encouraged were you by Tiger at the Players?
It's encouraging. It's encouraging that he made the cut just one under the number. So he barely got in. On Saturday morning when he teed off, he was in 69th place. And, man, he put together the best 36 holes that we've seen him play. Didn't get the results of how well he struck the ball on Sunday, had the double on the hard number 17 on the stadium course. But Tiger Woods hit the ball and would have to be excited about going forward. Not only because of how he hit the ball. Like I said before, I thought he's lost a little weight. I think his fitness training is also, we're starting to get closer to the summer. You could see him on the golf course sweating and grinding. So the mentality to be able to hit shots under pressure, even though the winner was a long ways away. It was basically a tournament for second place. Tiger Woods is showing that he's going to win sometime this summer. The only shot that he has left in his bag that he can't do consistently, that's hit his drive high right to left, to hit a high draw. When he starts hit a high draw, the same thing I said before the Masters, but he hadn't been able to do yet. He can't hit that shot consistently. When he hits that shot consistently, you will see him back in the winner's circle multiple times.
I'm glad you brought up Webb Simpson running away with it, because Tiger was 2 touchdowns back going into Saturday. He was 14 shots off the lead. And going into Sunday, Webb Simpson was 18 under par.
18?
Going into his round on Sunday. So unless Webb Simpson signed an incorrect scorecard or knocked it in the water at 17 a half dozen times.
Or retired.
Right, he was going to win the tournament. So it kind of was everyone fighting for second place. And, man, Tiger stood on the tee at 13 in second place. Just 4 back. If he did have a part of the round Saturday and Sunday he'd like back, probably how he closed. He was on the first 12 holes Saturday and Sunday, he was, I believe, 14 under, and then on holes 13 through 18, he was 4 over. A lot of that is the double
Yeah, he was
bogey.
really bad on 14. He had a wedge in his hand and got a bogey on number 14. That stopped his momentum.
That stopped his momentum on Sunday, and then he also had the double bogey, as Cece mentioned, on 17. But I thought you mentioned that particular drive he's not able to hit. I thought on Sunday in particular, or maybe I think it was Sunday in particular, he was hitting his driver as well as we'd seen him hit it all year. He was dominating the par 5s, the best he'd been on par 5s in a tournament since the Arnold Palmer, second best since the comeback. Like, this weekend was as encouraging after almost getting cut. There was a time on Friday it looked like he was going to get cut where he played for stretches as well as he can play.
Yeah, well, just from a technical standpoint, he cannot hit his driver the way other guys can hit it, left to right and right to left. He was holding on to it a little bit, didn't necessarily have the distance. Those in the golf business know when Tiger gets his driver back, then all the courses become, he had a lot of irons off the tee, playing very conservative. The reason why, because he doesn't have the confidence with his driver yet.
Let me ask you a question real quick. I apologize, Jenna. The last tournament, we talked about how I think 3 of the 4 rounds he had more than 30 putts. He was just awful with his putter in the most recent tournament he played in. What do you think of his putting in this tournament?
His putting was great. Back on greens he's very familiar with. He didn't like the greens at Wells Fargo. Couldn't figure out the speed on them there in Charlotte. So, yes, his putting will be back where his chipping was, which was outstanding.
All right, so then let's talk about the ceiling for Tiger Woods, which is what we all want to know. What could he do? When could he do it? How far out? I mean, is it the next couple tournaments? Is it the U.S. Open? Let's talk about that.
Well, there's two really conversations about Tiger Woods. The way he's playing now, when will he win, and can he win another major, or how many majors would he win? So the ceiling with Tiger, it's about majors. Can he win another major? I believe he is good enough to win another major. I believe it's going to be very interesting. Watch the British Open this summer. It's going to be at Carnoustie. It's a long, very, very flat. The way he hits his iron, he wouldn't have to maybe hit some of his drives as often. I believe those plays. Shinnecock is very, very tough. Here in New York State, going to be playing that for the U.S. Open. But I could see Tiger in the next 2 years winning 1 or 2 more majors.
Why is Shinnecock tough? I know we have that on Fox and FS1. Why is that compared to Carnoustie tougher?
The U.S. Open is always a tougher venue. All right, it's very, very windy out on the island. Tiger, if he can't control his ball flight, especially with his driver, he can't hit the fairways. The U.S. Open has always been one of the toughest tests, but always one of the toughest for Tiger not being able to get in the fairway, because if you don't hit the fairways, it's very, very penal.
Do you agree that he seems, and we say this in this most recent comeback, just a lot looser, enjoying being out there a lot
he's a
more?
different person,
He's a different
Jenna.
person.
He's totally different. We've seen all the interviews of Tiger Woods. He's very, very abrasive, very, very short on his answers, and wouldn't let you in on some of the insight. He was kind of like a robot. A lot of in golf, they call it stock. That's how far you hit a 9-iron. They have like a stock. Probably goes 155. There's stock answers when you get behind the podium. We see it in all sports. And Tiger Woods was just known for that. Now you're starting to see his personality. You're starting to get a chance. And he's different. You see, he has a relationship with Phil, one of his arch nemesis, what he really didn't like. Him and Phil didn't like each other. You see other interviews on the course. You see his interaction yesterday with Jordan Spieth. Tiger Woods is a totally different person than the Tiger that we knew before.
How much of that do you think is, you bring up the lower back fusion, first golfer ever to have his lower back fused and then resume a successful PGA career. How much of the different mentality or the different personality we're seeing do you think is because there was a moment in time, maybe a long moment in time, when he legitimately wondered if he would ever be able to play like this again, if he'd ever be able to go play at a high-level professional golf again, and he's just grateful that he's able to be out there again?
I think some of it is, but I think also the ultimate humiliation. Not only what happened with him and his ex-wife, but what happened with him with the DUI. Seeing that, seeking some type of treatment and getting beyond that. I believe that with the back fusion and 9 months ago, 12 months ago, not knowing if he would ever play golf again has brought him a lot of joy. So when he had the DUI, just to finish up on that point, there were a lot of people who reached out to him and said, Tiger, if you need any help, anything. And I think that moved Tiger. It changed him. And you can start to see that, Jenna, as you mentioned in his interviews.
All right, we're going to take a break. Coming up, let's talk some football. The soap opera that has become Des Bryant. Will he ever get signed to an NFL team? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Super Bowl champ, Cris Canty.
What up,
Good morning,
Good
Jenna.
to see you, brother.
How's it going, Cris?
I'm good. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. It was Mother's Day, that one day that I get to have to share it with Steph. So.
There you go. I can't believe you took it there. Okay.
I mean, I feel like that is something you guys signed up for jointly.
I know.
Every
we
time
didn't
I come on
factor
the
that
show,
in.
every
I know.
time I
I'm
come on the
sorry.
show, it's
How was your
something new.
Happy Mother's Day, Cris?
She finds a way to make it awkward.
No.
Every time.
Happy Mother's Day, Steph.
There's something that Jenna
Anyway.
topped it. She
Sorry.
always
Can I
That
take
wasn't
your
even on
key off your
purpose.
lapel pin and put that in the corner of Jenna's mouth?
Okay. Sorry about
close
that.
it, lock
You
it
set
up.
me up.
Lock it up.
Throw away the key.
We set her up.
Okay, we're good. You guys, you teed it up. It was T-ball.
Wow. Okay.
Continuing
How was your
coverage.
weekend? Good, except for my
wife.
No, that
selfish
is not.
lady.
That is not what I said. Wonderful. Continuing coverage of Des Bryant and his lack of being on an NFL team. It seems everyone in the Dallas organization has something to say about the former Cowboy. New wide receiver coach Sanjay Lal said, quote, "Without getting into specifics, I just saw more inconsistencies in his game." Woo! CC, does the coach have a point about Des?
First things first, let me tell you about Sanjay Lal. I don't like, he's a good wide receiver coach,
yeah,
but I don't like the fact that he's making comments about a player that's not on his roster. It's not fair to that player. NFL coaches don't do it. He should be talking about how he can get the receivers that he got better, all right? Because he got his hands full. And trying to comment on a player that's trying to get a job somewhere else, it's unprofessional. It's unbecoming of an NFL coach to do. And we've seen this. Last week, it was the scouting department. This week, it's the wide receiver coach. All right? I've heard enough from him. All right? And if you were so good, if they were so good, why didn't they tell Des this before he left the building? All right? Don't be trying to tell me when I'm down the street and I'm gone, you want to help me. I need help in this career. The last 3 years, Des Bryant has struggled. His overall productivity. So, yes, what the wide receiver coach is, he's correct. Yeah, your information is good. But don't tell that to people. You don't need to tell it. How does it help the Dallas Cowboys? It doesn't help them at all. Now, Des has been one of the greatest wide receivers that they've had there. All right? Lead the franchise in touchdowns scored. Now, that's worth a little bit of respect. What Des has done and him leaving the building, we don't need to be talking about that information. So I'm very disappointed in the Cowboys and their organization, and they're just seeming to be consumed with, oh, let's tell the people how bad Des Bryant was now that he's gone. Now, is he inconsistent? Yes. Does he drop more balls than any other point in his career? Yes. Is he less effective in the red zone? Yes. All the numbers would indicate that to be true. But for you to put your mouth on another player, it'd be no different than the last team you were coaching as a wide receiver coach. If I was a great player, you know what? He wasn't that good. The wide receiver coach I got now, he's so much better. He's got me so more prepared. So watch yourself. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. The Dallas Cowboys, it's enough of it.
It's happened a lot.
Exactly. It feels like the organization is going out of their way to talk about how bad Des Bryant has been on the football field the last few seasons. And I think everybody understands where Des is in his career. He's not the athlete that he was when he was 25 years old, and he's not being productive because he can't create that separation. I just don't understand why the Dallas Cowboys are still talking about him, because he's not on their team.
Why do this? What's the point? What do they gain from it?
Well, it's because it's exactly what CC said. He's one of the greatest receivers in Dallas Cowboys history. So the fans have some attachment to Des Bryant.
There you go.
And so the organization is trying to justify the decision to move on from Des Bryant. But it's not really necessarily all about the production on the field or lack thereof. A lot of it had to do with things behind the scenes that they can't get into, because when you start talking about chemistry, when you start talking about the relationships between the players and the coaching staff, I think Des Bryant was one of those guys that was mercurial of sorts. He was one of those people that would rub guys the wrong way. You didn't know when Des Bryant was going to go off. You didn't know what little thing was going to set him off. And because you have a young quarterback and you're trying to get him back on track in 2018, the organization made the decision to move on from Des Bryant. I get why they made the decision, but they're trying to justify it by just pointing to the stats and the production. It doesn't make sense to me.
They're trying to justify their decision, and you make a great point. And what you do on a daily basis, weekly basis, doing local radio, you got stories on the New York Giants that people on TV might not see. But when you're doing local radio, you need more content. They're trying to justify the decision that they made from a football standpoint by putting all this information out there, because in Dallas, on radio and with the fans,
it's the other stuff.
The team wants Des Bryant on the team, so now they're trying to justify that decision by letting this information get out.
It's just, there are a lot of organizations across the league, and this might frustrate us in the media, it might frustrate some fans, but there are a lot of organizations in the league that only the head coach is allowed to talk. Only. Obviously, GM, owner, but the lowest rung is head coach. Some teams, the lowest rung goes to coordinators. I cannot. The reason there are so many anonymous scout quotes is because most team scouts aren't allowed to go on the record. Certainly positional coaches aren't supposed to be out doing interviews, and if they are, it would only be positive puff pieces. Here's why we think Cole Beasley's poised for a breakout year, talking to the Cowboys wide receiver. Right. Do you seem, I'm just curious, because you seem, maybe it's just building on it, but a little more bothered by this than what the scout said. Is it more bothersome to you when it's the coach, when it's a positional coach, someone Des has worked with, or is it just they're equally as bothersome, one's just building on the other?
The scouting, it's justified because not only did they scouting department, they scouted Des in college. They have seen his decline. They got it. They can chronologize everything in Dez's career. They've been with Dez.
And it's not their job to make him better.
The wide receiver coach, he just got there. He's been somewhere else. I need Dusty to look up where he's been, his resume, because I'm going to let y'all know by the end of the show the years where he was good and the years he was bad based on the lack of productivity.
Yeah, he was with the Colts, he was with the Jets, some of those organizations.
Yes.
Not necessarily standout wide receivers outside of T.Y. Hilton. But in terms of why the organization is talking about him, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Right.
Now, Dez Bryant will have a job in the National Football League. I think it's just the timing of the release and what's been going on since that with the NFL draft, and now we're getting into some of the football stuff, the OTAs, the minicamp coming up. I think that teams are trying to evaluate what they have on their roster at that position, and then once we move closer to training camp or get into training camp where you start to get a better idea of what you have at the wide receiver position and seeing a possible need with a player like Dez Bryant, I think there'll be a team that makes the decision to bring him in.
Nick, are you confident in that? Because we've been saying this, I mean, from the day he was released, we're like, oh, he'll get picked up. I mean, it was assumed it was days, and now it's going on weeks,
Listen,
and now we keep finding teams that don't want him.
Overestimated is the right word, what his actual market in the league is. Now, the offer he got from Baltimore is exactly around the dollars I thought he would be offered in about the year. So maybe I didn't overestimate it, but that he turned that down. So he has overestimated what his actual value is. But once he turned down that offer from Baltimore, reportedly 3 years, $7 million a year, no team seemed to be excited to go, oh, we got to grab Dez, because any team, here's what we do know, any team that ends up signing him was fine with leaving him on the market for days, weeks, and potentially months for someone else to go grab him. What I don't want the audience, though, to miss the point that both Cris talked about, which is the local pressure in Dallas. A guy I used to work with does mornings on the radio station that does, whenever we play a Jerry Jones interview, it's Sean and RJ on 105.3 The Fan. So I used to work with Sean. So I know the Dallas radio market a little bit. Man, people need to understand, there are Cowboys fans that believed Dez Bryant was better than Michael Irvin, that believe that right now Dez Bryant is still one of the 6 or 7 best wide receivers in football, and that believe...
And all of them need drug testing.
Okay, fair enough.
For both points.
I just think that the Cowboys are reacting to fan pressure that they shouldn't. Those Cowboys fans will concede, oh, yeah, Dez has dropped off. He dropped off from the best receiver in the NFL to the 6th best receiver in the NFL, when he probably dropped off from the 4th or 5th best receiver to outside the top 20. I just don't know why the team feels the need. They're sold out every year. They're sold out every game. The most popular team in the league. It's not like, oh, if we don't cauterize this wound, our stadium's going to be half empty.
No,
like,
you're right.
They don't have to respond to this.
They don't have to respond. And what we're going to do as a show, we're not going to overreact, because it's only May. It's May the 14th. 3 months from now, it might be a legitimate question, but it's not a legitimate question now just because Dez Bryant isn't on. There are a lot of quality players not on NFL rosters that we're not talking about. So come August the 14th, that's 3 months, right, from today? If he's not on the roster, then we would have a legitimate concern.
All right. Cris, we'll see you a little bit later on the show. I promise you it'll be less awkward. Guess what?
You
It won't
can't
be.
guarantee
It
that,
won't be.
Jenna.
I can't guarantee that at all. No
Hey,
doubt.
Steph, it's Mother's Day
Coming
today
up.
for you, because yesterday Jenna robbed you of that one.
You good? Okay, we got it all in? How can the Rockets make a statement tonight against the Warriors? That's next on First Things First. Back to the show, former NBA champ and great friend, Steven Jackson is here. What's up, Steven?
Good to see you.
I'm always happy to see y'all.
You enjoying the playoffs thus far?
Yeah, now I might be a psychic.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I said 2 days ago, Monday, we're going to be talking about how Boston blew these boys out.
Oh.
I said it 2 days ago.
What's
Look
up?
at Action Jack.
I said it 2 days ago.
Very nicely done. That makes two of us. Let's talk about the other matchup, the one we all wanted out west, the Warriors and the Rockets. Game 1 of the conference finals tonight. These two have been on a collision course for this game for months now. And while the Warriors are looking to get to the finals for the 4th straight time, Rockets, they're not going to make this easy. Steven, I'll start with you. How important is it for the Rockets to win Game 1, to get out of the gate quickly?
Well, it's very important. You playing against a team that has multiple champions, NBA champions. You playing a team that is more confident than anybody in the NBA as far as a team-wise, coaching staff, stars, organization, city. This is the most confident organization in the NBA right now. So Game 1 is more important to them because they need to get off to a good start and get a win to have some confidence to feel like they can win this series. I honestly feel like Houston still has a little doubt because they're playing against a team that, like I said, that has proven to be champions, that even though Houston has the #1 seed, everybody's still looking at Golden State as the best team in the West. So this #1 seed really doesn't matter in this series, but Houston has to win this first game to let them know that they're here to stay.
And I would be even willing to argue, Nick was at Boston last night, saw the crowd there. I'm not saying Houston has bad sports fans, but they're different than the other 3 teams that are left. When you go to Oracle, we know what we're going to get there.
Oh, man.
I mean, they've had the biggest home court advantage in this 4-year window. In Cleveland, man, they're going to give it to you there, and the Cavs played tremendous there. We saw what Boston provided yesterday afternoon. So of the 4 teams, Cleveland, Houston and your fans, man, we need you to step up tonight. Winning one game, people don't realize in a series like this, it's 25% of your work is done.
Right.
You got six other games to get the other 75% done. So getting Game 1 is monumental, especially for a team that has the history and I would think the lack of overall confidence that Houston has compared to Golden State, Nick.
I know how important it was in this organization for them when they got the #1 overall seed, when they de facto clinched it with a couple weeks left. They hadn't officially clinched it, but they knew with a couple weeks left, we did it. That was something they were focused on. They thought was a real possibility. They thought they had squandered the opportunity when Harden went down. If you remember the couple weeks he missed earlier in the year, they lost, I think, 4 games in a 2-week stretch, and they thought, well, there was our chance. But given the injuries Golden State had, and then the Rockets went on this insane tear when everyone was healthy, this was a big deal, top to bottom in the organization. If they lose it in 2 hours and 20 minutes tonight with one bad Game 1, the deflating nature of that, I think, will be hard for them to get over in time for Game 2. And they fall down 0-2, this series is wrapped. If they fall down 0-2 with both those games at home, it's over. So, I think this game is drastically more important for the Rockets than for the Warriors. I'm picking the Rockets to win. Baked into that is they are winning tonight's game.
How do they win tonight's game? What do they need to do? What's their game plan? What should they focus on?
Well, a lot of what we said, they got to feed off the crowd's energy. They got to come out and just be Boston. You know, Boston, even though we're the home team, they still felt like they were the underdogs, and they came out and played like they wanted Game 1. They played with a sense of urgency, even though it was Game 1 in the series. That's what Houston has to do. They have to go out there and play like this.
It helped Boston. They didn't have an opponent. They basically didn't play anybody.
they didn't show up, but we all know that the Kang and the guys are not going to show up like that Game 2.
Right.
So Houston, you have to have that same sense of urgency Boston had Game 1.
And also the hustle plays, the things that necessarily aren't on the stat sheet. I want to see, especially in the first quarter, how Houston does that. Loose balls, rebounds, deflections, all those things that we're not going to have a whole bunch of conversations about besides shot making. That's what I want to see, because that, in the Boston series, that is where you could see the Celtics had a tremendous edge yesterday over the Cavs.
Just to talk about the importance of Game 1 for another moment, I think the pressure right now is squarely on the Rockets. They're the 1 seed. I think what we're saying here, people nationwide are saying it, no matter what city you're in, about how important this game is for them. If they win Game 1, I believe, Steven, the pressure flips directly to the Golden State Warriors. Because a team that we've talked about all year long that went 50-5 in the Rockets with their best 3 players, if the Warriors are in a spot where if they fall down 2-0, you're really going to beat this team 4 out of 5? You're really going to beat this team at least once, either Game 5 or Game 7 on their court and win all three.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to do that calculation, Nick, without pitchers. All right, it depends on how those 2 games go. All right, because you can leave and be down 2-0 and still have confidence depending on how the games go. You feel like, man, we almost got them figured out. We might have had a mad quarter. We might not have shot the ball as well. We believe we're going to play defensively. So we shouldn't predict what the series is going to be after 0-2 without seeing what the pitchers are and how those 2 games were won and lost.
Well, and you also can lean on, I don't know a defensive coach that's on that Houston Rockets roster. I know Mike Brown. He's a great defensive coach, and I know they can make adjustments to stop James because they have in the past. I don't know if Houston has that defensive coach or the defensive guy to make adjustments to kind of frustrate or stop Golden State. I don't think they have that there. So that's going to be a big question, what they're going to do defensively, because the whole year, their offense been their defense. They've just been playing up and down. And if you make Capella make plays, it's going to be hard to beat Golden State.
Then why do you think their defense, they had the 6th best defense in the regular season. They have the 2nd best defense thus far this postseason. Why do you think they've been successful defensively?
Golden State?
No, that's the Rock. That's Houston.
Houston's been successful because they make you take tough shots. On offense, they get every shot they want. The whole year, James has been getting layups, lobs. They've been getting every shot they want. So they kind of like Golden State. Their offense is the defense. We take great shots, make you slow it down and walk it down and score over all 5 of our guys. That's really the best defense in the NBA right
and
now.
Also the mentality of people like P.J. Tucker or Ariza. They bring an overall toughness.
I love Ariza.
That I believe has carried over to James Harden. You can say anything about the other 4 players. James Harden is a better defender in 2017-18 season than in any other season that we've seen him.
Who's the Rocket best equipped? Nobody's well equipped to guard Kevin Durant. Who's the Rocket best equipped to guard Kevin Durant?
It's the same way as LeBron. You can't stop this guy. You just got to make it difficult. It's going to be a collective effort. It's going to be Ariza. It's going to be P.J. Tucker. Gerald Green might have to guard him a couple times if guys get in foul trouble. But I want to see KD guard James. A lot of people know this. James struggles when he has length that guards him, that can move their feet. He struggles. So that might be a situation we see in this series, too.
That's interesting, because I think most people anticipate Clay's going to be on James. KD on James. Listen,
yeah, but they switch so much.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now, Houston can get whoever they want.
On James. Out of pick and roll.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that's something, I know we're going to talk more about this series later. That's the thing I'm looking for, is they're going to try to hunt down Steph Curry, and we can get into that more later.
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's smart.
All right, Stephen, we'll talk to you in a little bit. Coming up here, could LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard be teammates in Philly next season? That's next on First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.